Did you know that the Phantom comics were deeply rooted in the themes of colonialism, anti-colonialism, and the apartheid? Well, I didn't know about it myself either until I started my research on the Phantom comics. And if you want to know more, tune in to find out. Hey everyone, and welcome to Geekdom Forecast. And today we'll be talking about Phantom, the ghost who walks. Before we start off with the main topic, let's talk about Phantom, a little bit of his background history. Phantom is a fictional comic character that first appeared in daily newspaper strips created by Lee Falk in the 1936. He's considered to be one of the most well-known comic characters of the pulp magazine era. And for those of you who don't know about the pulp magazine era, they're basically your detective-based, noir-based, dark comic books of the 1930s, 40s. The Phantom predates most of your popular DC and Marvel characters, and in fact, this character laid the groundwork to what is most called the standard outlet for most comic book characters. For example, the skin-tight purple spandex, where you can see, every part of the muscle, and of course the white eyes, which has been later been emulated by the likes of Green Lantern and the Batman. Yes, Phantom was the first one. Regarding the white eyes, Lee Falk was originally inspired by the bust of Greek statues. Falk originally envisioned the character as a wealthy playboy named Jimmy Wells, who would then morph into his crime-fighting persona called the Phantom by night. Taking inspiration from the likes of King Arthur, Zorro, and Tarzan, he completely abandoned the playboy millionaire image and then put Phantom in the jungle. Falk had a hard time coming up with the name of the character. He originally wanted to settle for the Phantom, but there were lots of characters going by the same name. So he thought of going by the Grey Ghost. That too didn't work because he found Phantom to be a way cooler name. The origin of the Phantom predates to the 16th century when a certain Christopher Walker accompanies his father to a sea voyage. However, they are attacked by pirates and a young Christopher is the sole survivor. He is washed ashore in the fictional place of Bangalia in Africa, where he is taken care of by the pygmies of the Banda tribe. Early issues of the Phantom comics, we see that he found a body that was washed ashore and he saw that that body was covered in his father's clothes, and at once he realized that it was his father's murderer. He took the skull of the murderer and then he took an oath which has become like completely iconic in the world of comic books, and it goes something like this: I swear to devote my life to the destruction of all forms of piracy, greed, and cruelty. My sons and my sons' sons shall follow me. The Phantom comics were immensely popular. It was published in New Zealand, Australia, and even in India, where it was written in your regional languages such as Hindi and Bangla. The Phantom property was never with one sole publisher. In fact, he just kept oscillating from one point to the other. In 1940s, he was with Ace Comics. In 1950s, he was with Harvey Comics. In 62 with Golden Key Comics, followed by in 66 with Charlton Comics, where he stayed for a longer period of time. And yes, he did appear in DC Marvel miniseries, and he kept going back to the newspaper strips, and basically he doesn't have like a sole home. The beauty of the Phantom is that he is a legacy character, meaning the mantle of the Phantom is passed from one generation to the other, with the current Phantom going by the name of Kit Walker. The Skull Cave is where the Phantom resides, and one section of the Skull Cave houses the burial site of all the Phantoms. The Skull Cave houses a library as well as a minor treasure room to mostly fund his crime-fighting campaigns, and a major treasure room which has historical artifacts such as the Sword of Excalibur, and then there is King Charlemagne's crown, just to name a few. The Phantom has two iconic rings. One is the good mark and one is the evil mark or the skull mark. He places the good mark on the people who he befriends and who he puts under his protection. And the evil mark is meant for his enemies, and it really leaves an impression on the cheek. Phantom sits on the skull throne where he gives audience to his people seeking his help. He is guarded by the pygmy bandar with poisonous arrows. The messages are passed to talking drums, and supposedly the Whispering Grove also whispers the Phantom's name. Phantom also has his own horse called Hero and his wolf, his pet wolf, who goes by the name of Devil. He also has a helper going by the name of Guran, who is somewhat like Batman's Alfred. Kit Walker is in the city. He has his own disguise that is basically like a long trench coat, a hat, and some dark shades. The world of Phantom proved to be an inspiration for countless superheroes. These clever nuances, or even gimmicks if I might add, turned to be standard tropes for comic book characters all around the world. This helped in further establishing these characters as almost mythological, and they were laced with fantasy elements. The story of Phantom is somewhat like Robinson Crusoe, where he's marooned on a dark continent. He also has elements of Mowgli and Tarzan, especially with the entire aspect of a character mingling with the local populace. And lastly, the action adventure swashbuckling antics of Zorro. So far, 21 Phantoms have tried to maintain law and order in an otherwise savage land. Scholars have noted that this is in fact a justification of the settler to civilize the local population who are seen as the uncivilized. It is the duty of the so called white settler to eradicate all forms of irrationality or superstitions and instill among them the Western school of thought. One such example could be that of the Phantom comic called The Rope People, written by Lee Falk and drawn by Wilson McCoy. In this story, Phantom saves a bunch of adventurers who are captured by the Rope People, who are in fact the actual settlers of the land. Here, the Rope People are portrayed as cannibals, and it is up to Phantom to restore law and order from their quote unquote savage ways. This builds a white Western philosophy of morality, superiority of Westerners over anything that is seen as foreign. As already mentioned, the first Phantom set out with his father on an adventurous sea voyage. However, they were attacked by pirates. This thirst for adventure is a reflection of the Renaissance phase where Europe had a cultural reawakening. However, we must not forget the capitalist intent of such a voyage. The Westerners in this case are seen as adventurers and the Easterners are seen as the uncivilized. The pirate who attacked young Christopher and his father are known as the Singh Brotherhood, and the Phantom simply calls them the Orientals. Phantom is in fact indifferent to the identities of their differences and simply sees them as the villains on whom he swore revenge. The character is also quoted as saying that if the law of the jungle fails, it shall return to its savagery. In fact, the 21st Phantom was educated in Oxford so that he could learn the ways of the West so he can better understand the law of the jungle. It could be interpreted that the white man has willfully foregone his comfort for the West, but has instead chose to stay in the jungle for it's his moral duty. However, there is a different school of thought which states that Phantom comics were in fact reflective of the social political climate of Sweden. During the mid 60s, Phantom comics stood for social justice, racial equality, and later the character even became a supporter of decolonization. This was a result of the constant criticism and backlash which the character received from popular organizations. Phantom comics were later modernized, and one such example is in the story The Secret of the Plantation, where Kit Walker saves an elderly black man from some white officials. Walker later receives a history lesson of the racial oppression faced by the elderly man's family prior to the country gaining independence. It also drifted away from capitalism to socialism as seen in the issue Trade War, which talked about mounting debt, dependency, and monopoly over resources. With the new modernized Phantom, we see him turn more towards the left. It also shows what the current political scenario was in Sweden back in the 60s and the 70s. There is a definite shift from the pangs of colonialism to the advocator of racial equality, justice, and anti slavery. So that's it for today, guys. If you do like what we are doing, hit us a like and do subscribe. This is Ren, signing off.